Okay, so 2 minutes past 10 here in Melbourne this morning. So, very special welcome to everybody that's on the webinar today. This is the first webinar establishing value-added agri services in our two-part series. So we've got today's webinar and then a second webinar that will be coming on the 27th of March next month. Today, we're really going to be looking at discussing the how of unlocking and scaling the opportunity for your agri accounting customers. And really the essence of that is to be able to better support them and grow your businesses that you are also passionate about. By way of introduction, my name is Cam Anderson. I'm the Director of Growth for Figured here in Australia. And joining me today on the call, we've got Matt McLaughlin. Give a little wave there, Matt. Matt's our Partner Manager for Figured Australia. And we've got Jack Danning, our Partner Success Specialist for Figured Australia. Again, we're really pleased that you could join us today, taking the time to do so. This webinar was actually delivered live at QuickBooks Connect in Vegas. So very excited to be able to take it off the stage and format it into a webinar so that you can get the benefit of that. So between the three of us today, myself, Matt and Jack, we hope to be able to share with you kind of some further context on why we really do what we do and what that can mean for you in your role as a trusted advisor in the agri sector. So just before we kick off into the content, just a little bit of housekeeping. You will see a chat button somewhere there on your screen. We do really encourage you to participate throughout the webinar, ask questions as we go. We will send answers to the questions as part of the webinar follow-up. That's if we don't get to them throughout the webinar. And you'll also receive a copy of the slide deck as well. There will be a couple of polls throughout that Jack's running, so please, they're anonymous, please participate in that, and we will be sharing the results of the polls live. So to kick things off, I'm going to briefly speak to the outline of the webinar today. So the webinar is broken into three parts. The first part is largely around identifying the opportunity and establishing value add or high value agri advisory services. The second part will take a little bit of a practical approach to some strategies kind of from what we've seen in the market to overcoming some of the common barriers or hurdles. And the third part, which Matt will take us through, is really preparing ourselves for a data-driven and AI-enabled industry. So on average, the opportunity for advisory in agri specifically is significant. So on average, Australian practices increase their billings and their revenue by 115% by offering these value-added services to clients. So we have a look, I'm sure this is no surprise to you. Advisory is a growing service line. Most firms in the Australian market anyway are reporting a 16% increase year on year. So strong top line growth in their revenue, and a fair portion of that is coming from advisory service lines. So Figured has about 35,000 farms on the platform today. This data that you're looking at on the screen relates just to the Australian market. And you can see the breakdown there across the different Figured products, which directly correlate to the services that these firms are offering. So 115% average uptick or uplift on customer fees for those firms who are making that strategic shift from compliance-based services into the more advisory type regular interaction stuff. So what this is telling me, what it's telling us is that within your existing customer base today, there is a significant opportunity, a very substantial opportunity in front of you. And the important thing to note is that 79% of advisory revenue actually comes from existing customers. So these are customers that you know and have a relationship with today. So further to that, just on the relationship side of things, Xero and Figured conducted some research a couple of years ago, and what they found from that is that farmers who get just compliance services from their accountant, so just sort of year-end tax, BAS, that kind of thing, consider their advisors to be 23% valuable. when we look at it from the, if they're getting planning, budgeting, advice on performance metrics specific to their business, that number jumps considerably up to 83%. And just to add to that, the same piece of research also found that around half, so 52%, of farmers actually say that their accountant is involved in their farm budgeting and financial decision making. So what that says to me is, despite what a customer's paying in fees, their perception of you as an advisor is tied to the value they receive, not the price that they're actually paying. So this is a recent Spotlight Global Advisories Trend Survey. So I'm sure a number of you use Spotlight, very trusted in the market. And what they asked is to their survey participants is, do you provide management reporting, mentoring, forecasting, or similar work to your clients? And these are what the results showed. So 29% of those survey participants said yes, and it makes up a significant portion of our fees. 56% or over half said yes, but we could do much more. 13% said not really, but we have kind of thought about it, perhaps given it a go. And 2% of the respondents weren't interested in that kind of work. So the standout for me really is that over 50% of the survey participants in that Spotlight research we're wanting to do more advisory. So there's definitely a need for that, and there's definitely a want to do that. I just would like to ask where you consider that you might sort of answer on this survey, and we'll pop a little poll up. And just consider kind of in the back of your mind, if you're in that 56% of yes, but we could do much more, what is it that's actually holding you back from this today? If you're in the 2% not interested in that kind of work, then this probably won't be the webinar for you. Haven't seen anyone jump off yet, so that's good. So yeah, overwhelmingly, most people have answered yes, but we could do much more. So very much in line with what Spotlight found in their global advisory trends research. I can almost, guarantee, I asked the question, what is actually holding you back from this today? I can almost guarantee that the answer to that question is going to be around one of these things: capacity, people, and skill to potentially execute and deliver on an advisory strategy. But the common theme between each of those things is that people are at the center of all of that. So pressure is continually mounting internally. Everyone's being asked to deliver more growth if you're at the partner or director level. If you're at the accounting or on the tools level, you're being asked to produce more work, more outputs. Externally, farmers are needing more input, more expertise. And of course, you want to be able to deliver for them. But most often today, this is delivered as a reaction to a client request for a one-off project. So something like a bank budget, a refinance, your annual review, machinery purchase, or something like that. So it's kind of ad hoc, responding to inbound client requests for information or advisory projects. And the approach, largely until now, has been to kind of find more productivity from existing agri specialists within the practice. And this very quickly leads to adverse impacts on the team. So, and also client relationships. So the insight there on the screen, 82% of accountants who left accounting last year from practices had at least 6 years experience under their belt. So that's up, it was 77% in 2022. It was 71% in 2021. So we're seeing that number increase year on year. And it's probably no surprise that most sort of staff turnover in accounting practices is from those with significant tenure. So by significant, maybe greater than 6 years is not significant for some people, but if we look at what goes into that first 6 years, we've had a lot of training invested. They've got the most experience sort of sitting at that intermediate to senior level, and they've really got developed those client relationships, and it really poses a significant risk to firms from a key person perspective, particularly as those relationships are built with clients. So now more than ever, skilled talent is leaving practice. They're going to commercial roles, they're changing careers altogether, or they just haven't adapted to post COVID life in practice, or potentially their firm hasn't adapted well to that. And also to add to that, it's really difficult to attract new staff and new talent at the other end, and particularly difficult for our practices that are in regional areas. So the advantage of diversifying your kind of service lines, it really helps with your employment brand and your profile. Not being able to execute on a strategy and the stuff that we're talking about today, it really will prevent you from getting ahead of the market. While those who do, they'll build a really competitive advantage in the market, and they'll see the benefit for years to come, both from their business model perspective, but also from an employment brand perspective. And of course, the opportunity for farmers is significant too. So it's not just one for us as advisors. Farmers really value, we hear this all the time, they really value having their accountant at the table in those kind of strategic planning, budgeting, forecasting meetings. We know that Agri is a tight-knit industry, and those that work in it, like ourselves, have a hugely deep care for farmers and for farming. And I think really giving farmers better information for decision making and giving them clearer views of the future, whatever that might hold, really makes a significant, meaningful difference to their success as a business and to their long-term viability. So we look at that from having better, more timely information. It really allows them to make those informed decisions that are backed by data, and allows them to plan and respond to kind of external events as and when they occur, rather than reacting. So responding rather than reacting, we respond, we've got a plan in place. And of course, if we're reactive, the accountant is always the last to know, and the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. So we're here as Figured to really help ease the pressure for our accounting partners here in Australia, and really help you to derive that growth, derive that value, and really provide some of that stability that you need to be able to support you to deliver better outcomes for your clients, your farming clients. So whether that's through enhancing something that you're doing today as part of an existing process, or potentially taking a bigger leap into designing a new service line. Now, of course, a specialist industry requires specialist tools. So I've got a very simple analogy here, and that is that you wouldn't harvest with a garden lawnmower. Why? Because it simply doesn't have the scale. So that is a very simple analogy, but one that everybody can picture. If I relate this back to accounting firms, what we've seen is that agri-heavy practices are unable to deliver what they want to do at scale. And if we dig a little bit into why is that, fundamentally, it's quite a simple answer, is that agri is very specialized. It's one of the most specialized industries in the world, in fact, and these advisors are not adequately tooled to be able to do so. So for some time now, accounting firms have tried to unlock this opportunity. Many have had a go. They're using the tools that are available to them today. They're using a garden mower in the paddock. So I've got a good example of this, of a practice we work with in Southwest Victoria, where they were doing all of these fantastic things for their clients. So they were doing everything from quarterly catch-ups and reporting down to even as frequently as monthly. The problem that this partner had is that it was all based on Excel. So they'd gone on to Xero for the client accounting, fantastic. Clients loved it, the practice, the team loved it, but it was taking them 2 hours almost a month to update the budget and forecast in the spreadsheet per client. So very quickly constrained in terms of growth. We've re-platformed that practice onto Figured, so they're already there in terms of the service they're offering, but now they can really scale that and dial it up, and not to mention kind of the other benefits that come in terms of deriving insights across clients. So I guess the problem is you can't really, to summarize that, you can't unlock an opportunity with a generic tool that's not fit for purpose or scale. So thinking back to our mower. And that's in the same way that a generic or should I say, general practitioner accountant can't be as valuable to their clients as a specialized farming accountant with that industry specific knowledge and experience. So think of it as, why do we have a rural bank manager when we've already got a whole bunch of commercial bank managers employed by the bank? It's the same thing. They're specialized in what they do and they get the customer. And to my point before around Xero, although the cloud general ledger softwares are incredibly powerful in their own right, what we've recognized is that you can't actually unlock the advisory opportunity for Agri specific by combining it with spreadsheets and disconnected workflows. And we saw that in that example of the practice in Southwest Victoria. I think spreadsheets have their place. I absolutely have so many spreadsheets that I use in my job day to day. But they're just not built for Agri clients or kind of any sort of scale. So I'm just going to shift into a little bit of, take the opportunity to uncover some of the common hurdles and obstacles that we see a lot of advisors coming up against when they try and sort of tweak their business model. So, there's some that I've already mentioned earlier in the webinar, but kind of specifically, we hear these kind of things. So, the usual things are the partners or the directors can't agree on an approach. They can't get aligned. Barry's retiring at the end of next year, so there's just no point changing anything. He doesn't want to change anything. My team can't do the work that they've got today. And if that's the case, I certainly hope that they're not in that 82%. Some of the other things are kind of more into the detail. How will we measure it? Specifically, if we do away with timesheets, and I'm not suggesting doing away with timesheets at all. And instead of focusing on the why we can't or the why not, I just want to frame up some of the why we should and what that means for you as advisors. So building advisory on a solid compliance foundation. So you're probably worn out, to be honest, of people like me banging on about advisory and value add and all this all the time. And it's really is a word that's lost its meaning because it's become so overused. But really, in its most simplest form, it's just delivering additional valuable services that clients need, whether they know it or not, to be able to help their businesses succeed. So it's certainly growing, across the wider industry as we've seen technology or sort of tech stacks for a practice is really enabling that shift. And I will just pop up another poll here around how much of your practice tech stack is weighted towards solving an internal need. And what I mean by that is something that is specific to you. So whether that's workflow, time management, efficiency, or it's something that's customer focused. So we're looking at something that enhances their experience with you. So whether that's some sort of online portal, maybe it's the Xero work papers for queries, that kind of thing. Maybe you're testing NPS, asking NPS questions. Again, sort of we reference some of Xero's own research of those firms that increased their profit in the last year. The most common factor that contributed to their increased profit was offering a wider range of services to clients. So I'm keen to sort of just break that down a little bit into kind of bite-sized pieces and what that might mean. So as an advisor, as an Agri accountant, which I assume we all have a portion of Agri in our client base to be on this webinar today, you know the numbers. Not all farmers are financial experts. That being said, we're seeing a huge rise in the likes of kind of Farm Owners Academy, our friends at Farm Owners Academy, those kind of industry bodies that are really in supporting their farmers in kind of financial acumen and financial curriculum. And they have a huge following. So there is, they are certainly looking for that and they're wanting to get a better handle on their kind of finances and what that actually means in their specific circumstance. You have a great customer base. So this is the opportunity. This can be leveraged. So we know back to my first slide that I put up with the compliance versus the advisory fees, that 79% of that increase comes from your existing clients today. So these are clients that hopefully love today. We do a little bit of quick math, kind of, what does 115% increase look like on some of those clients that and love today. The third point here is around high levels of trust. So what I'll say about this is, although technologies like Zoom and Skype and online video platforms and email significantly reduce the need for in-person meetings kind of on a day-to-day basis, accountants still rank in the highest five in terms of professionals, in terms of trust. And another little point to that is that transparency in pricing and moving to fixed pricing models can significantly increase trust, but we'll come to that, and trust with your clients, but we'll come to that in the next webinar. You may have a known competency in the agricultural industry. So you understand the industry, you're in the best position to provide expert advice. If you're not known, get known, basically. Making the shift. So this is kind of, we're getting into the shit, we've actually got to do something here, point of the webinar. Unfortunately, much of what makes practices great in their compliance service and their offering in that space really hinders their success in advisory if they don't carve out and craft a specific strategy to address that opportunity. So there's a change of mindset required. There's a slight change of approach, slight change of process, and we'll talk a little bit about that to really lean into scaling advisory. So just to give you an example of that, we need to look at a move from internal efficiency to customer value. So what does that mean? The compliance service has consistently been optimized, improved for decades. You could argue even centuries. But if you actually think back about all of those improvements to the compliance process, they've all been internal. So the customer has still, they've been driven around efficiency and accuracy. The customer has still largely received the same output from a value perspective. The service line really hasn't changed materially. We've just got better at delivering it. We've got faster, we've got quicker, that kind of thing. We've got better tools. Arguably, that should create a capacity gap, but it's not something that we're seeing. But what I will say is, when crafting your strategy for advisory or value-added services, take into account that a big part of the innovation that goes into that will need to be externally focused. And what I mean by that is, in particular, understanding the latent needs of customers and designing services that customers will value. So we've seen examples of this, particularly in the USA, where they will have a huge firm, 3,000 staff, for example, and they have a compliance division, a tax division, all the rest of it, and they have advisory separated out to the side. Now, one of the practices I was speaking to, by their own admission, said, this is actually not optimal because they're missing a huge opportunity within their compliance base to be moving them into that advisory piece. So in Australia, we're mostly kind of a one business unit. We do see some sub-business units. We're working with a practice at the moment that has gone vertical in their approach. They have built out an agri-specific service line, but they're still kind of struggling with some of the things that we're talking about in this webinar when it comes to being tooled up and being able to execute against the goals of that business unit in terms of what they actually want to achieve from a customer service perspective or a customer offering perspective. Last week, I was lucky enough to attend the Global Agri Finance Leaders Summit in Auckland, and I see some of you on this call were there as well. So that was in Auckland, NZ. We had about 70 of our partner community there. And in one of the workshop sessions, the task was to derive the key success metrics surrounding an advisory service model. So we said, okay, we're 2 years into the future. We're doing all of the stuff that we're talking about today. How do we measure that? Not surprisingly to me, and I am an accountant ex-practice, by the way, most of the things that the participants in the table that I was at spoke about things like recoveries, average billings, and utilization, which are all in great metrics for today, but they're all internally focused metrics, efficiency metrics, actually, to be more specific. So when we kind of zoomed out, it sort of took a step back and took more of a customer-centric view, participants in the table I was at anyway started to consider things like client net promoter scores, CSAT scores, which customer satisfaction scores, average query response times, and the frequency of kind of, actually measuring and recording the frequency of their client interactions and touch points. So of my 100 clients, how many of them have I not spoken to in the last 90 days kind of thing. So definitely a change from focusing on internal efficiency to customer value. And you'd really need to start to think like the customer, put yourself in the customer's shoes to be able to do that. A shift from compulsory to discretionary, and again, we kind of putting ourselves actually in the customer's shoe here. So advisory, value-added, whatever you want to call it. This is a discretionary spend by your customer. It's a choice. So the difference being that compliance today, which is a fair chunk of most practices fee base, is often a grudge purchase by the customer. So this is not new news. We all kind of know that. But what that actually means is that you're not competing as an advisor with other accountants or advisors. You're actually competing for other uses of your customers' money. And it's a big piece to consider and get right in your strategy if you're looking to move towards this. Personally, if I've got discretionary spend, it's usually going to go on a holiday or some sort of treat for myself, a car, something like that, because that's what motivates me. And it is a personal choice that I have control over. So I'd just ask you to kind of have a bit of a think about what is it you think that motivates your clients today to do what they do? And if we consider this from a different perspective, how can you help them plan to have more discretionary income to spend on the things that matter to them? From their place to yours. So carbon, I'm sure many of you use carbon in your practice today. They did a global practice report a wee bit back now in 2022. But what that report highlighted is that the biggest delta in capability between leaders and the most leaders and the kind of bottom of the barrel laggards and the accounting firms that were part of this study wasn't in tech. The delta wasn't in tech, people, data, reporting, or process. It was actually in marketing. So if we dig into that a little bit, it's going to mean that we need to start to rethink a little bit about how we market ourselves, our practices, how we promote and even position ourselves in the eyes of the customer. And kind of just speak to an example that I see all the time is that often accountants' websites will talk to their years of experience and there'll be some nice photos of the principals and maybe they offer 20 different service lines, that kind of thing. But the reality is it needs to move from internal focus to external focus. So if I could frame it like this, your customer's going to need to see themselves in your marketing narrative and how you can either help them make money, save money, or manage and mitigate risk. And for that alone, it's probably going to be significantly material change in kind of how you held yourselves out to market today. And of course, clients, they're not asking for these services today. They don't even know a lot of the time of, what you as advisor can do or provide to them. And if you're saying that farmers aren't asking for this type of work, I think that's because you're likely thinking of advisory as if it were compliance. And so just to link back to the workshop discussion in Auckland last week, we have to get in the shoes of the customer and think like them. A common misconception that we hear is, our clients won't pay for extra services. Yet no one's ever complained about their fees if they're seeing the value in the service that they're getting from their advisor. From general to vertical specific, so agri compliance services, there are some vertical nuances. Of course, there's things growing out of the ground, there's biological assets, there's specific tax regimes and all that kind of stuff, but really they're all kind of on the edges of the big picture. And given that advisory is really about sort of living in the customer's world, be prepared to go much deeper with vertical skills. So choose a few, if you're just starting out, choose a few industries to start with. It's really difficult to differentiate yourself, in the eyes of the customer when you approach advisory as a generic service. So what I mean by that is, we do budgets. Well, what does that actually mean? What is the output for the client? It's going to help them meet their hopes and dreams and all that kind of fuzzy, warm, fuzzy stuff. That's probably enough from me at this point in the webinar. So I am going to pass over to Matt. He's going to take us through, what we can actually start to expect or consider probably from a practical perspective to leverage what you're doing today with your customers and really take an incremental approach towards changing things up in your practice. Matty.
Awesome. Cheers, Cam. Some great insights there. Yeah, so hi everyone. So yeah, Cam's proposed some questions, which are probably pretty relatable for a lot of you here today. And it's good to see that all of you are still on here. So that's saying something. So we've talked, a bit about the opportunity and hopefully got you thinking about how this relates to your own customer base. Given this opportunity lurking, how do we now shift to a new mode of operating that is geared towards uncovering what sits behind that opportunity? What if there was a way to deliver Agri advisory at scale and realize the benefits that the cloud promises to really just enable the delivery of a high value and personalized service without needing to find more staff, more people, more hours? So answering these questions is really why Figured exists. And finding a better way starts with asking ourselves some questions like, what if we didn't need to spend so much time getting production data from our farmers? What if our teams didn't need to continually copy and paste to custom spreadsheets? And what if we didn't need to have experienced staff checking over for human error for double handling of data? What if there was a better way to execute advisory services that didn't lead to scope creep or staff burning the candle at both ends? So cloud is really the enabler of all of this. Like cloud is the new way. And as all of you have, you've built your horizontal systems through your cloud accounting solutions. So the likes of Xero, MYB, and QBO, to name a few, as the core. And those cloud tools really power the collaboration horizontally. But is it appropriate to call out that you shouldn't be using horizontal tools for vertical specific jobs? Which is exactly why we've partnered with Xero, MYB, and QBO. Those platforms form that horizontal cloud accounting layer as the baseline for you to then, stand up the vertical specializations on top, whether that be Agri or anything else. But Agri does reflect the need for that T-shaped vertical solution. And you simply can't do Agri with any scale, as Cam has mentioned, on spreadsheets. And as much as Agri represents a vertical opportunity, it presents incredibly specialized requirements. So from compliance to compliance plus to advisory. So I know a lot of you are probably thinking, great, we've already invested in the cloud for your accounting software, and you might have already run a couple of trials with Figured in the past, but it hasn't been your golden ticket to retirement or sailing around the Maldives. So context is really everything when it comes to appealing to your farm clients differently, in the same way that a robust strategy is required from an accounting firm to shift from efficient client and compliance to efficient advisory. So for example, in this picture, you've got a cash flow report formatted in a way that's conducive to having conversations with your farmer that speaks their language. And that's why we're seeing firms successfully rolling out Compliance Plus, which is all about providing those incremental value adds alongside your existing processes and work streams. And it really forms a connective tissue between your compliance operation and an advisory one. And it's not rocket science, but it is rooted in psychology. If you want a different outcome from an existing relationship, you're going to have to start fronting up in different ways to drive that engagement. And the best way to spark up new conversations with anyone is to bring some new and relevant, valuable evidence to the table. And it's not an overnight sleepover. It's a journey for both you and your customers. But really actionable deliverables around these concepts will be covered in more depth in the next how-to webinar. But I encourage you to reach out before then so you can understand how it's relevant to your own practice. So moving to this next slide, when we say solve for the middle, we're referring to that middle section of your client base that they're not your top operators, and then also not the opposite of your top operators. So we might call them your end of year headache clients. But solving for the middle, they're the ones who are open to having a new conversation with you if positioned correctly. And they're the group representing the biggest opportunity for scaling advisory through your existing customers. And advisory does require personalization, but it doesn't have to be this high touch, super hyper personalized to your top 1% of your client base service. You need something for that middle that's going to give you the biggest chance at moving clients up the value chain. Otherwise, what else is really going to move them there? And we understand that scale and personalization haven't traditionally been tied in with Agri due to the specialist nature. And I know Cam took a bit of a crack at internal efficiency focus earlier, but it is critical to scalable advisory. You're gonna need to require internal efficiencies to deliver this. And what could be received to your clients as personalized advisory is now available to the masses through tech developments such as report pack automation. And that is what scalability is. Fitting into your existing workflows and alongside your existing client interactions, whether that be, twice annually, your quarterly BAS cycle, tax planning time, or year end, whatever the client touch point is, you're leveraging an efficient process to drive value and reposition your practice beyond compliance. And be opinionated about it. Farmers are not financial system experts. You can't solve for the middle with the tech stack mess. Letting your clients build your tech stack will result in multiple systems and likely lead to frustration within your firm. Accounting firms are best placed to recommend the best solution. And on another little analogy side, I don't go to my dentist and disagree when they say I need a filling because I've been eating too many lamingtons, because they're the experts and I really trust them with that advice. And farmers are unlikely to have considered these points, yet these are at the core of what you need to provide the services that they need. So be opinionated about what works for you and your firm and set those expectations really clearly. And be data-driven from the outset and in your approach. You've got this rich vein of data coming into your practice from the likes of Xero, MIB, and QBO, to name a few. And your data asset is only going to become more and more valuable and accessible to utilize the more you develop it. And this little example on the screen just showing some modeling that figured around on the commodity price change, identifying at-risk customers in terms of their net profit and interest cover ratio. So looking around those things around debt serviceability. So this was real customer data giving advisors a steer correctly towards their most at-risk customers. So moving on to the next one, looking at preparing for a data and AI enabled and enhanced world. It's really going to allow you to harness its full capabilities. It's everywhere already, as you know, and it's allowing us freedom and space when it comes to automating many tasks. And it's a common observation that, AI won't replace accountants. As we mentioned, what you're all doing is incredibly specialized, but accountants who utilize AI will replace those who don't. And like any software business right now, Figured has taken steps in investing and looking into this new world. And where it really starts for you is getting the shop in order from a data hygiene perspective as the first cab off the rank. We need that before we can leverage any of the exciting insights that AI gives us and get into the real value add stuff. So in its simplest form, at Figured, we're looking into AI to enable advisors actionable insights into how they can best serve their customers today. Who is at risk, who is in a position to embrace an opportunity when it arises, and that goes for both advisors and their customers. And it's a new and exciting world, and like any shiny new thing, it can be a bit stressful sometimes looking at that opportunity, especially when you drill down into how this will affect your business, your clients, and your team. But with all these opportunities, there can be an equal amount of overwhelm. So walking before you run in relation to Agri really just means digitizing your Agri book and your workflows to the cloud, and beginning the nurture journeys of value adds and that data hygiene. That's a good place to start. So What about you? So Cam has taken you through, identifying the opportunity around advisory, strategizing how you can overcome common hurdles, and I've just outlined some things around why it's important to be preparing for this data-driven and AI-enabled industry. I want you to picture your firm in 3 years' time. Where would you like to be? What habits and mindset do you want to see flourishing within your team? And what action can you take today to ensure you're setting yourself up for success and take those trusted client relationships that you already have to the next level? How can you shift from that 23% that Cam alluded to before to the 83% of farmers who are going to be defining you as really valuable when receiving farm budgeting and financial decision making? Think about what you could do, what that could do for your brand, for your referrals, and attracting a talented team, giving your teams the gift of working with clients who are truly grateful and value the good work that you all do. So hopefully we've given you a good overview of what establishing value-add accounting services could mean for you and what is it creating for the agriculture industry as a whole. Today, we've probably just taken the tip off the iceberg in terms of framing the opportunity. And we hope you can join us for the second webinar in this two-part series on the 27th of March. This next webinar is going to go a lot deeper into the how. How do we leverage what we've got today to provide value, and how do we segment our client base, and how do we set objectives against a plan? So we look forward to seeing you there. I'm just going to put a link into the chat. We're offering a chance for you to connect with us one-on-one here in the Australian team to discuss your specific firm requirements. As much as we appreciate farming businesses are different, we understand it's the same for accounting firms. So I've dropped this calendar invite link where you can just book a one-on-one 15-minute chat we can have before the next session. We can chat about anything you like, but really it's about understanding where your firm sits on that curve of agri-digitization, what things you could be thinking, considering moving forwards for taking the opportunities in front of you. And I'm just going to share the results from our poll earlier. Yeah, it's really good to see. Obviously, majority of you here said that yes, you can be doing more in the advisory space. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out for a chat. Today's webinar recording will be circulated to the registrants over the next day. And just want to say a big thank you from all of us here at Figured for joining, and hope you have a lovely last day of March, and we look forward to seeing you soon.